All right, welcome to the Viking Age podcast. I'm your host, Adam Patrick. I'm the editor and lead writer for thevikingage.com. And as always, I'm joined by Chris Schad, who writes for us here at the Viking Age, as well as Bring Me the News and
Zone coverage.
Zone coverage. I always forget that. Before we start today's show, make sure to like this video and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure to follow the Viking Age on Twitter and Facebook. And the audio version of this podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. So, all right, let's just get right into it. Yesterday, Brian Flores was, or B-Flow, as the Vikings like to call him already, was...
It's such a bad nickname, by the way. Like when I think of, sorry to interrupt you, but I had to interject there. Like when I think of Flo, I think of Dumb and Dumber and the diner scene where he's like, "It's the stupid of the day, Flo."
I think of Flo from Progressive commercials.
That too, yes.
So B-Flow was introduced on Wednesday at the TCO Performance Center as the Vikings' new defensive coordinator. Flores was a finalist for the Cardinals head coaching job, but he chose to join the Vikings instead due to what he called a quote gut feeling, unquote. He fielded questions, talked about his philosophy a little bit. Talked about some things about like his kids being excited because they love Justin Jefferson. They were doing the gritty everywhere, and shared an interesting story about how like his daughter took her first steps in US Bank Stadium. So it's just some interesting stuff in there. Nothing too crazy, but did anything specific stand out to you from anything that you saw from yesterday?
Well, first of all, you mentioned, he's like this. I had a gut feeling. His gut feeling said, "Don't coach Kyler Murray," because that team in Arizona is so it is so dysfunctional. It's not even funny right now. Kyler's probably going to miss all of next season. He
not all of it.
The rest of and the rest of the roster is just trash right now.
Yeah,
they have nobody on defense. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get traded because that was a mandate before like the general manager even showed up. It is bad. So, Brian Flores was probably like, I could take this job. I know he was a finalist for the Denver Broncos defensive coordinator position.
Mm-hmm.
Decide not to take that. That's probably a better job. Not than the Vikings, but better job than the Arizona Cardinals one. Because if he does a good job here in Minnesota, one of the worst defenses in the league, teams are going to come calling next year. So he was asked about that during the press conference. He was kind of like, hey, I'm here now and whatever. Very Carlos Correa-like, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like the part where he talks about being aggressive and adapting to different teams, because he was asked, what's your scheme? 3-4 or 4-3? Right. 3-4 or 4-3. And he goes, who's the opponent?
Yeah.
I like that. And I think it's going to have, he mentioned that he likes players with a lot of versatility. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be great moving forward. Scheme wise, I like what Brian Flores is going to do. What are they going to do with the players? Who are they going to keep? Who's going to come back? We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but a lot of questions on who is here. But as far as like the fundamental side, I like the hire of Brian Flores.
Yeah, too. He comes from, I think there's a lot of similarities actually to someone we'll be talking about later, which is Mike Zimmer. They both come from the same tree, which is the Bill Parcells tree. Flores worked with Bill Belichick, who obviously was the defensive coordinator for Bill Parcells. But yeah, the aggressive. Here's a quote that I like that Flores said yesterday. He said, "By nature, I like to be aggressive, not reckless. There's a method to the madness. There's a rhyme and a reason. Whether it's down and distance, field position, etc." So yeah, he's like night and day compared to Ed Donatel. And I think that'll be good. He does have a lot of work ahead of him. The good thing is that the defense really can't get any worse than the worst in the league, so he does have that going for him. I think it's interesting that he chose the Vikings. I think it might have been maybe the most stable situation for him is in terms of, good fit, because Denver, they just got a new owner. You don't really know how they're doing things, and then they got Sean Payton and everything. You don't really know. I don't know if those two have ever really worked together. Um, and then Arizona, like you said, super dysfunctional. Um, they've been known to hire a coach one year and fire him the next year, so you don't know about that either. But you come to Minnesota, you got Kevin O'Connell, a young guy that Flores is familiar with from their time together with the Patriots. You got Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. You got some owners that are always trying to. It seems like they're trying to do whatever's best for the team, and they've been there for a while, so they understand how the league works and everything. So looking deeper into it, it's not too surprising they chose the Vikings over. But some people be like, "Oh, why wouldn't you be a head coach of the NFL?" It's like, well, sometimes it's not the right fit, and plus, it would have been his second time, and if he failed the second time with the Cardinals, he's probably done as a head coach in the league for the
Yeah.
rest of his career. So he's probably being more careful with, you know, where he goes in terms of being a head coach next. And I think he's got a great opportunity here. If he fixes the Vikings, if he makes them 20th, people are going to be like, okay, like we're interested in this guy, and that's like a super low bar, but that's really all he has to do. Um, so basically, do you think Flores can turn the defense around?
How long is he here?
Yeah,
That's I think that's a good, and a lot of it has to do with which jobs are open next year, right?
right, right.
Again, like you mentioned, if he takes the wrong jobs and it's just a dumpster fire like the Arizona Cardinals are, like he's probably getting fired. If he finds the right job and he goes into that, like he's going to be gone after a year. Um, in the short term, it's going to be better. I don't like it depends on what you say is fixed.
Mhm.
Is 20th fixed? Sure. I think he can do that,
Yeah,
especially if he gets the pieces that he needs.
yep.
If you're expecting him to turn them into a top 5 defense next year, that's not going to happen. They don't have the cap space or the players in order to do that. And in fact, it took him a couple of years in Miami in a similar situation where they had absolutely nothing on the defensive end to turn them into a middle of the road defense. His defenses in Miami were never a top 10 unit, I believe. Might have been in points, but as far as yards go, no. So I think it's going to be better. Fixed, it depends on what your definition is.
Yeah, I think one thing going for him too is that when he got to the Dolphins, or when he's with the Vikings now, his offense that's going to be, they're going to be better than what he had when he went to the Dolphins, and he's working on that defense, and that can help a defense. Like the longer an offense is on the field, that can help your defense as well. So I think that'll be helpful for him moving forward. Yes, in terms of fixing the defense, yeah, I think if like if it's 25th,
I don't think
uh
that's fixed.
no, I
Still
would
pretty
say
bad.
I would say you got to be in the top 2/3 probably
Top
of,
20.
yeah,
Yeah.
of the league to be considered fixed. And there's, you know, he might not fix it, but at the same time, we know that we've heard this a lot. He's gonna go down swinging. Like he's not gonna just sit there and let people just run all over him. He's gonna make life difficult as possible as he can for the opposing offense. That might result in some big plays giving up, but he's at least gonna try and stop the offense where it looked like the last defensive coordinator was just like trying to play prevent the whole time, and he's like, "Well, we're not giving up the big plays," and it's like, "Well, you kind of are."
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited with Flores. I'm excited to see what he does. I'm excited to see like if he brings in any different coaches, what he does with that, and then what kind of players he brings in. Is he going to bring in any guys from like the Dolphins or the Patriots that he's worked with before? Who is what it's you mentioned like how long is he going to be here? So like, do you include Flores in your philosophy like in drafting players? Because what if he wants to draft someone like that's really good for his system, and then he's gone in a year, and then you get a new system, and that player doesn't really fit. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. If they're smart, I think they should like kind of groom um, an assistant defensive, or just have someone waiting. Groom's a bad word to use, but have someone in waiting for like in case Flores leaves, that someone can take over and kind of just run the same philosophy. What do you got?
I'm looking at the defenses as far as points allowed last year. The difference between 20th and 15 was only 22 points. Cleveland Browns gave up 381 points. The Tennessee Titans gave up 359 points.
Oh, total. Yeah.
Yes, total points. The difference between 15 and 6, the Titans gave up 359 points. The Dallas Cowboys gave up 342. So really, when you think about it, I mean, I'll go down to the Vikings here. They get 427 points. So that, yeah, right. Yeah, they were tied for 28th with the Lions and the Colts. Not great names, but Jeff Saturday wasn't scared giving up all those points, especially in a certain comeback. So yeah, that's about 60 points they need to shave off from between. Okay, maybe it's a bigger jump than we're thinking here, but I mean, I'm making a good point here.
60 across 17 games doesn't seem like that big of a feat. That's what, like a little over 3 points a game.
Let me do some Steiner math here.
So
what do we say? 60 divided by 17.
Yeah,
that's 3.5 points. So basically, don't give up a field goal every game.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's doable.
Sure.
So and look, like the Eagles had one of the best defenses in the league, and they gave up 35 points, 38 points in the Super Bowl. So like, as good as a defense is in the NFL today, they're not as good as they used to be. They're not. There's no more like 2017 Vikings, 2000 Ravens, stuff like that. Like, it's hard to come by. Like, I know the 49ers were good, but they didn't help them win a Super Bowl. So you just need an average defense in this league and a top shelf offense. So I think offense still needs to be the focus, but the defense needed to be fixed. They couldn't ignore that. So, all right, sticking with the defense, but player wise, Patrick Peterson. I guess you could still consider him Vikings cornerback because the new league year hasn't begun yet, so he's still technically under contract. But a few days ago, he tweeted a pair of pictures of himself in a Vikings uniform that included 3 emojis in his caption. The emojis were the 2 big eyes, the hand on the chin thinking face, and a padlock. So some felt like this seemed to indicate Peterson was sharing that, he's like a lock to return to the Vikings in 2023. I didn't really get that from this. I didn't really actually know at all anything that he meant by this. But apparently this is the thought process of some people. And then I listened to the Access Vikings podcast from the Star Tribune, and Ben Gessling said that, basically this tweet wasn't really a coincidence. He mentioned that Peterson was in Arizona for the Super Bowl, and so were some members of the Vikings, and perhaps maybe there were some talks about, bringing him back for at least another season. So is re-signing Peterson, who will be 33 in July, a good thing or a bad thing for the Vikings?
Well, first, how much is he going to cost? Like some of these veterans, that's a big thing. Like if you want to bring back Patrick Peterson, who was effective last year, he signed for what, $4.5 million, I believe, after signing for 10 the year before.
Right.
So if I'm him, I'm going to the negotiating table being like, I'm a leader in the locker room. I balled out last year. I still have good football left. I want more money than $4.5 million, which at that point, yeah, if it's like 6, I don't know. I mean, that'd be, that's still pretty good, right? For
6 for Patrick Peterson, who's a future Hall of Famer. Yeah, I'd take that.
I would take that. But if he wants like something closer to 10, you got to move on. And you have to think too, how was Patrick Peterson successful last year? They played a lot of zone. He got his best playing zone coverage. And he even said when Ed Donatel was fired, he was surprised that Ed Donatel was fired, which there is a lot of politicking on that podcast. It's really good. It's really good. There's a lot of insight, but man, there is a lot of like hype man stuff, Brian McFadden in the background going like, yeah, Vikes going to win the Super Bowl this year. Shut up.
Did you ever hear that the Giants said they watched that before the playoff game?
No.
Yeah, because Peterson gave away some of like how he helped stop the Giants in their first game. They watched that. Yeah. So maybe don't talk as much. Maybe listen to Zimmer and stop doing so much of that podcast thing or whatever you're doing,
those newfangled machines.
But
Just yeah. So I mean, if they brought him back, I wouldn't be like, oh my god. Like I would not like if we're talking about like Viking Chris being upset on like Viking moves. Adam Thielen back at 20 million is like at the top, and then like I don't know what would be back at the bottom, but it would be more toward the bottom, whatever that would be.
probably like bringing Zadarius Smith back too, probably be at the bottom.
Justin Jefferson 10-year extension would probably be at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but yeah.
No. I would look at that and go, okay.
Yeah, this is, yeah. I would, like you said, depending on the cost, I would think it would be a good thing for the most part. Because not only is he still doing pretty well on the field, he's a good person to have like in the cornerback room. Because I think last year he kind of took that leadership role more seriously, and I think he talked about having like the defensive backs over every week to watch like Thursday Night Football or Monday Night Football, something like that, and they would talk about the games and everything like that. So that's the little things like that go a long way, and I think people like that, having those people in the locker room is important. But yeah, if he wants like 10 million a year, sorry, dude, you're gonna get a rude awakening because no one's gonna give you that.
Right.
And then two, just if you want to be here so bad, just take a little bit less. But would you do another 1-year deal?
Yeah.
I think
I would. I mean, it would have to be like a 1-year kind of veteran special.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing a 3-year deal for him because he could go on the field, be in this new scheme, and be like, oh my, he's not good. So
yeah, and he got exposed when he was put in those one-on-one situations, like when he was thrown out. Like people didn't throw against him or throw to him in his direction a lot because everyone else was just wide open anyways.
Isaiah Hodgins and Daniel Jones probably owe him a fruit basket. Daniel Jones specifically. I mean, he should send like Ed Donatel Jelly of the Month Club or something because
made him a lot of money.
It's gonna make a lot of money because of that game.
Aside from Peterson, who is one Vikings defensive player that you don't want to see back in 2023?
Probably Eric
Only
Kendricks.
Only one.
Only one, yeah. I think Eric Kendricks is the one that has to go. Like, I'm sorry. Like, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, Eric Kendricks is great in the community. And, well, he can do that like in his free time now. Like, because I don't know.
Super Bowls.
I don't know. He could chase the Super Bowl. I mean,
I'm saying doing stuff in the community doesn't win you Super Bowls. It's not bad, but like that shouldn't come into play. Like when you're like, should he return or not? Like,
should we give him $13 million?
Or else Kyle Rudolph would be the starting tight end still.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Eric Kendricks right now, if we're like talking about one player I absolutely don't want to see back, it's him because he's slowed down over the past 2 years. You mention it all the time, him jogging behind Saquon Barkley. You could probably put his tag team partner, Jordan Hicks, in there. That's probably the guy I want to see back less than Eric Kendricks because I want to see Brian Asamoah hit the field. I want to see them get a younger, faster linebacker like Drew Sanders from Arkansas, who was an edge rusher. Like, I think he is going to be a target for this team, either in the first or third round. I mean, first, he's being mentioned as a first-round prospect, but he could fall into that third round. If the Vikings trade back, he could be a guy that they get. You don't want to draft 2 linebackers in premium positions in back-to-back years, but I think that's the type of defender that Brian Flores is going to target. So I think the linebackers are probably the 2 guys that I would want to see gone heading into next year.
Please don't draft a linebacker in the first round. That's like drafting a tight end.
No.
Like, please don't do that.
I actually brought up Bijan Robinson in the first round of Matthew Collar, and I thought he was going to I felt bad. He's like, I feel bad, man. I dunked on you really hard. I'm like, no, that's why I said it.
Well, I was thinking too, like the last kind of big risk that people took on a running back in the draft was Saquon Barkley, and look at him now. He's like already banged up and almost out of the league.
And there's a difference between taking a guy like that at 4 and taking a guy like that at 23.
Yeah,
Like if you're
that's
sitting
true.
there at 23 and you're like, okay, this is a top, like we're doing best player available. I could see the Eagles taking Bijan at 10 because they are loaded everywhere and they could just say, F it, let's take the running back at 10.
I
like
hope
it's
not.
not gonna hurt.
No.
So like I think the Vikings are in a different situation where they have a lot more holes to fill. But I mean, a team like 24, like you got to kind of think about it. Like, okay, this guy is an electric offensive player. We can hand it to him, especially with Dalvin Cook having shoulder surgery, which is a coincidence, right? Just
4
hey,
years
I'm gonna
later.
be that just this just annoys me. Like, really, it's just like he goes out like a couple years. Hate to bring out like with this example, but like the vaccine thing, he's like, I'll do anything to win.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't get vaccinated. So he misses a game, right? I think he missed the Rams game in 2021 because he tested positive for COVID. There was that problem. Then it's the shoulder thing. It's like, well, I didn't wear my harness today. Like, it's like, when you're at home and your mom says defrost the chicken, and then all of a sudden you hear the door turn, like, I forgot to defrost the chicken. Like, you are an NFL player. Like, do what it takes to get yourself ready. And you're going to put off this shoulder surgery for 40. He's had shoulder problems dating all the way back to Florida State, and he's never got them fixed. So, I mean, is he going to suddenly like have an iron shoulder at 28 because of this surgery? I don't think so. I think it's another knock on him. So I know that's a tangent, but if we're talking about players I don't want to see back, Dalvin Cook's at the top of my list.
Yeah, and I think him getting surgery now kind of puts that in jeopardy. Who's going to trade? One, he's getting like 11 million. Whoever trades for him is going to get like 8 or 11 million on their cap, and then they're going to hope that he's recovered in time from his shoulder surgery. So I would think that he's probably going to be a Viking next year. Maybe they can work something out with his contract or something, just renegotiate and give him some money up front. And I want to say, was it 2020 where he signed the extension? So maybe he wanted to hold off on
was,
like
right
surgery
before the season.
Maybe he thought that might have hurt his chances of getting an extension if he had surgery. So maybe there's that. But yeah, it's weird. What was it? Was it Schefter?
It is an elite power play.
Schefter was like, "Who? He's having surgery on his shoulder that he injured in 2019." And it's like, wait, what? It's 2023. What are we doing?
And you know what? To his credit, he had an awesome year in 2020 and 2021.
He did.
And then, last year,
and he did.
If you look at all the metrics,
and he still rushed for over 1,100 yards last year, but it was like more consistency problems. I think I wrote about him when he got surgery earlier this week, and him and Adrian Peterson, the only running backs in Vikings history to rush for at least 1,100 yards in 4 straight seasons. So that's pretty good company to be in. So as far as defensive player that I don't want to see back in 2023, I would say Jordan Hicks or Chandon Sullivan, because I don't really know what Chandon Sullivan was doing the entire year, except for taking his helmet off. If you
questioned him, he was going to come after you on Twitter.
Yeah, except for taking his helmet off when he didn't get a touchdown against the Colts twice. So, yeah, we don't need to see him back. They can put somebody else in the slot.
What is with the Vikings signing like psychotic corners in free agency? Like, hey, we got this guy for super cheap. He's great. No, he's actually insane.
Yeah.
Like
why do you think he's super cheap?
Yeah. Why do you think why do you think Bashaud Breeland went to 5 other teams before he decided to ultimately sign with you? Because he's insane.
Why do we keep signing guys that take their helmets off, like Dwayne Rudd and Chandon Sullivan?
Love that. I think I'd love Dwayne Rudd just for the play against the Jaguars where he stopped on the 1-yard line and started going like this. Like, come on, guys, come on.
How about Jerick McKinnon stopping on the 1-yard line and get that Super Bowl ring?
I know. Everybody's got the motivational things now.
Heady play.
He could have dreamed about being in the Super Bowl and scoring. Could have told his grandkids, shut up.
Yeah, now he has a ring.
Yeah.
So he can tell them about that too. All right, so last topic, Mike Zimmer, former Vikings head coach, in case anyone didn't know that. He's back in the rumor mill. Deion Sanders, Colorado, University of Colorado head coach, has kind of led people to believe that Zimmer is going to be on his his staff this season at Colorado. However, Zimmer's name has been brought up for the defensive coordinator openings for both the Denver Broncos and Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Broncos head coach Sean Payton and Mike Zimmer, they're old friends. They've actually worked together in the past under Bill Parcells. And new Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon, which, by the way, did you see his intro video or whatever, or like say hello to the Cardinals fans? He looked like he was being held hostage. That's
Was it
not
worse
good.
than Sirianni's introductory press
It
conference?
wasn't a presser. It was just like an 8-second video that he recorded on his phone. Like, hey, Cardinals fans, let's get ready to go. Okay, go. And
Did they kidnap him the second the Super Bowl was over?
That's what it felt like. But he's the new Cardinals head coach, and he actually was on the Viking staff under Zimmer from 2014 to 2017. So that's the relationship with those two. So if offered, should Mike Zimmer take either one of these jobs with the Broncos or the Cardinals?
Well, I think if he goes to Denver, he's going to a pretty good, we talk about what would get you back as a head coach. If he wants to do the head coach thing again, go to Denver, rebuild their defense, and you're going to get interviews, especially for a team, it's like a cycle, right?
Mhm.
Like you hire the old crudgety coach and then you go to the players coach like Kevin O'Connell. Somebody like the Jets. I don't know if this whole thing with Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers doesn't work out. I mean, Zimmer and Aaron Rodgers have a pretty good relationship as far as my understanding. Maybe he leads the Broncos to a top unit and they wind up, the Jets give him a call. He's the head
Cowboys.
coach and Aaron Rodgers is his quarterback. Cowboys as well. Cowboys is another good one. If he goes to Arizona, like I mentioned, there's nothing there on defense. There is a huge thing. I would take either of these jobs. I would probably list it Broncos, Colorado with Dion, and Arizona. But he's also older. So, I mean, out of the three, I would definitely go to Denver if I were him, especially if I want to be a head coach again.
Yeah, I think if you're looking weather-wise, go to Arizona. I mean, he's like mid-60s.
A lot of people retire in Arizona.
Yeah.
It's
perfect. But
his girlfriend can get some sun and, move that bike shop or whatever it was.
Talent-wise, you go to the Broncos. That's pretty obvious. But I think the Cardinals is interesting too because, I mentioned they don't have a lot. That could play to his benefit because he kind of has a blank slate where he could really do anything, and he's been known to get the most out of players. There's Isaiah Simmons is there. He's pretty good. Trying to think. Buda Baker's there. I think he would love to work with Mike Zimmer. Of course, JJ Watt is not there anymore. That would have been. I think Mike Zimmer would have loved JJ Watt. JJ Watt's so annoying, but those two would have been well together. I think I saw. Sorry, Rex Ryan is in the lead for the Broncos defensive coordinator job, which is hilarious. But yeah, if I had to predict right now, I would say that Mike Zimmer ends up with the Cardinals just because I don't think he's going to get the job in Denver, and I don't think he wants to deal with college kids for a whole year.
That too.
But
he did work at Jackson State last year. So
yeah, it's kind of he was there for a few weeks consulting or whatever. But here's another factor. So if Zimmer was the head coach of either team, the Broncos or the Cardinals, who would annoy him more, Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray?
Kyler. 100%. Though we just talked about those newfangled podcasts and your shoot 'em up games and your Call of Duty. And I remember Collar had a story about him talking about video games or something. And he just mentioned something super old and everybody was like, yeah,
Atari.
okay. Yeah. Atari or something. Mm-hmm. Russell Wilson is weird, but he's got a Super Bowl ring. And
very weird.
He'd be like, okay, but I don't know too. Russell's into the whole Jesus thing, like Kirk is. Not that that's a bad thing, but I mean, no. Russell is another level of.
No, I understand. He's on he's like an awkward kind of level like Kirk Cousins is, where it's like he's trying to
Yeah.
be something that he's not, or he thinks like he has to be a certain way to be a leader or whatever. And Zimmer would just like see right through that. And he would just be like,
Yes.
"No, not happening, dude." And he would probably try and trade him. He'd be like, he'd go to the ownership and be like, "You guys have a lot of money. Why don't you just trade him?" But Kyler Murray, yeah, I think he'd get pretty. I would love to see Kyler Murray go up to Mike Zimmer like he did last year and tell him to shut up, like he did Cliff
Cliff
Kingsbury.
Kingsbury.
That
He's
would not go
probably
over well.
he's probably on a beach somewhere drinking a daiquiri as we speak.
Yeah, no, I think he's trying to work with the Texans. Actually,
Oh,
um,
offensive
but
coordinator, that wouldn't be a bad job for him, I think.
right, but yeah, gotta go Kyler Murray just because the video games. Like it seems like it's emphasized so much, but he's actually like he's part of like an esports team, so like you can't really emphasize it any more than that.
Yeah.
So Zimmer, that would be like if he had a bad game, Zimmer would be like, maybe you should get off the video games. That would be so easy to like place money on. Like, is Mike Zimmer going to talk about video games after Kyler Murray's bad performance?
5
Yes.
interception performance. Yes, he is.
Like minus 150. So yeah, that's an easy answer. That's all I got for today. Next week, I think the combine starts the end of next week?
It might be next week or 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know it's in February, and February is almost done. So that will be coming up. I'm sure we'll maybe look at some mock drafts coming up. But that's it for today. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I have a mock draft coming out of the Viking age tomorrow. So
oh yeah, you do.
Make sure you check that out. I don't know what I'm doing, but hey, let's give it a swing.
I don't think the Vikings do either.
That's great.
But if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video. The audio version of this podcast will be available by the morning on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. But until next time, Chris and I will talk to you later.